Welcome in. We will wait a couple minutes for folks to join, and as we do, there's a link for a boot camp for management consulting. If anybody's interested, you can actually win a free consulting boot camp. And so if you want to enter to win that, we'll actually announce the winner at the end of this. So for those of you who are lucky enough to be here, one of you will walk away with a boot camp that's 8 courses to give you a lot more detail on how to actually go crush your interview. So we'll wait a couple minutes while those who are still joining join us, and then we'll get started here in about, just a couple minutes. All right, well, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Super happy to have you all on the line. And this will be recorded for folks who watch this later as well. But today I'll kind of give a quick introduction of myself and my life. We won't take too long on that, even though I could tell you so many great stories. Then we'll get right into the tips. We'll talk about Leland support and boot camps, and then we can, if there's some time after, we can have some time for some Q&A. So let's get into it. I'm Spencer Anderson. I'm a former Bain interviewer. I love to coach. I have a bunch of other hobbies. I'm actually a pretty terrible welder, but I do like to weld, and it's kind of the latest of my hobbies that I've explored on working with my hands. I've made some art for my wall, and I'm working on a desk right now. But anyway, that's a little bit about me. I attended Harvard Business School and worked at Bain for about just almost 7 years. I was a senior manager in the Denver office. I also worked in the Texas offices before that. I recently just joined Leland as the head of revenue. Both of these companies have compasses for their logos. So I didn't realize that till after I joined, but I'm realizing that I think I might want to join companies that have compasses. So if you're looking to hire me, there's a potential plug for you. There's a QR code here that can take you to my profile if you want to learn more about me. Amanda will also kind of drop my personal profile if you want to chat with me more about this. Would love to get to know you all a little bit as well. So if you want to jump into the chat, and you can answer one or both of these questions, but I would love to hear where you all might be working or studying. And then also, what was your #1 song on your Spotify Wrapped? My #1 artist for the last 5 years running is Enya. I'm in the top 0.5% of listeners. So while a Fat Rat song did take my #1 spot, Orinoco Flow is high up there, just so you all know. Noah Khan, Mehdi, that's great. My wife is obsessed with Noah Khan, so I love that. Nice. Welcome, Casper from Sweden. London, New York, we got some great ones. Dubai. Oh, congrats, Valentino, on graduating. That's great. Got a few for Bad Guy. That's great. Espresso. Nice. That's great. Well, welcome, everybody. Super happy to have you all here. And great to get to know you. Okay, well, let's just jump right in. In the spirit of answer first, I'm just going to lay out my 5 tips for everybody right here. So here they are. We're going to walk through each one of them. This is framed as for Bain people, but I've got a lot of friends at McKinsey or BCG and other top consulting firms, and I'm pretty sure most of these translate. So, you know, if you're looking for any management consulting, I think these should be pretty helpful. I've structured into landing the interview versus crushing the interview. So the first 2 are about landing it, and then the other 3 are about how do we actually like be successful in the interview themselves. The first is to be you. Don't be what you think Bain or McKinsey wants you to be. You know, be you. Be genuine. You're the best person at being you. And if you try to be somebody else, you haven't had much practice at doing that. And so you're not going to do a very good job. So be you. You've had the most practice at that. 2 is have an advocate in the room where it happens. So as you think about networking, and we'll get into this, but thinking about who's the number 1 person that you can have that's in that room that can fight for you and say, hey, we should give this person a shot, give this person an interview. When we think about crushing the interview, the 3rd tip is to practice being uncomfortable a lot. So do practice interviews, do drills, all these sorts of things. But practicing being uncomfortable will help you to be more comfortable in an uncomfortable environment like a Bain interview might be. Work together, don't work alone. So be collaborative. If you are intimidated by if you think of your interviewer as an intimidating person, then you're going to be intimidated, and you're not going to perform as well. So think about them as more of a friend and a guide, and don't work alone. And the 5th is to use game theory. So make Bain want you. You should have some healthy skepticism. Do you actually want this job? Consulting's not for everybody. And so you should think, do I actually want this job? And approach this from the perspective of, I'm also judging them, and think critically if this is actually something you want to do. That'll help in a few ways, and we'll get into those. So those are the 5 tips. We'll walk through each one of them. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat as we go. After each one of the tips, I can jump in and try to help answer maybe 1 or 2 questions. And then if there's more time at the end, we can spend a little bit more time on questions. And then obviously, like if you want to connect with a coach or have other introduction calls, you can have an intro call with me or with any other of the coaches on Leland. So let's jump in. Number 1, be you. Don't be what you think Bain wants you to be. I think I've seen just so many people, as I was kind of recruiting for consulting, and also as I was recruiting for consulting while I was at Bain and interviewing people, there were so many people who came through trying to position themselves of, oh, this is what Bain wants me to be. This is what McKinsey wants me to be. And so I'm going to be that thing. You know, I'm going to kind of frame everything around what they want me to be. Yes, you need to have a great resume and a good cover letter, and consulting should somewhat like make sense on your journey, but consultants come from a lot of backgrounds. So be you. As you think about perfecting your resume, be genuine, be honest, emphasize the aspects that you're really most proud of, the things that you can really talk about. Obviously, there's so many tips on resumes, like focusing on the outcomes and results rather than just the actions that you took. Another great question and piece of advice I give to people is, what did you do in that role that was unique, and why did you do better in that role than an average person? And as someone reads your resume, if they were to say, hey, yeah, I worked at Google or I worked at LEK or whatever it is, what did you do differently that was unique, that kind of makes you pop even more? As you think about your cover letter, write memorably. We read so many of these cover letters, and so it's just shocking to me how 95% of them sound kind of the same. And after you've read 20 or 30 or 50 of these, there are always a few that stand out. And as I think back on when I was interviewing, there were always a couple that I looked at that stood out to me after that. We said, oh yeah, this was this person. And you obviously want to be careful and not take it too far, to write too outlandish and weird. You don't want a negative connotation in your head of the interviewers. But you do want to have something that does make you stand out in a genuine, interesting way. So one of my friends loved whitewater river rafting, and he wrote about whitewater river rafting in his, and how it was kind of part of his journey and whatever else. And that, was kind of helpful for him to be able to get an interview. And then finally, be you. I think if you love rock hounding, then love rock hounding, or whatever it is. Be smart about what you share. You don't have to force those things into the conversation necessarily. But if things kind of work out to where you're starting to chat about whatever it is, with as you're networking or as you're even in your interview, find ways to talk about things that you love. I talked about soccer for the first half of one of my interviews, and it was great. And it was just very comfortable. It brought an environment that was really great. So be you. Be you. Don't be what you think Bain wants you to be. If there are any questions, pop them into the chat. If not, we'll jump on to the next one. I'm just going to jump into the next one, and then we can kind of like after the landing interview, if there are any questions there, we can take one or two. Okay, number 2, have an advocate in the room where it happens. So you've got to have, as you're thinking about trying to land an interview, there are, as we're pouring through resumes and cover letters, a lot of times, if there's one person in the room as we're deciding who do we actually give an interview slot to, if there's one person in that decision-making committee who says, yeah, we ought to give this person a shot, that holds so much more weight than even the best resume or the best cover letter. Obviously, those things are super critical and important, but if you have somebody in the room who can fight for you, then that's super important. I don't love the word networking. It can feel fake and predatory sometimes. And it's uncomfortable, right? But you've got to do some level of it. I love getting to knowing people and understanding more about them, learning from them, seeing if there's any way I can help, in their life. And I think as I have thought about networking in that way, it can be a lot more meaningful and real to connect with people. And if you don't actually connect with them, you don't have to force, a relationship to be able to get what you want or help them get what they want. But yeah, offer to grab a drink with people, connect through people there's a lot of ways to be able to do this smartly, starting with warm intros from friends, working through club members, finding alumni, sending LinkedIn DMs, Leland Plus actually has a lot of great templates for how to outreach there. So if you have more questions there, we can chat about those. Focus on the one. It's better to go deep than broad here. So if you can you obviously maybe need to start broad and establish some of those connections, but find somebody who you really connect with. And because at the end of the day, you need to stand out. And this third point, when they're in the room, you want them to be able to fully vouch for you. So you've got to give them a reason to. If they can't say, hey, we should give this person an interview, then they're not going to say it. And you're not going to be able to increase your odds of landing an interview. So focus on one person. It's way better to go deep than broad there. So we've got a handful of questions coming in. We've got one on, do you have to write a cover letter? So most places require a cover letter, not all of them. I actually didn't know what a cover letter was when I was applying, and I had to quickly research and figure out what a cover letter was. But I think a lot of places do require a cover letter because it helps to kind of provide a little bit of additional flavor on who you are. For today's presentation as well, it can be new graduates or graduates from MBA or even industry hires. So I think there's a lot of these apply to the kind of standard processes of undergrad and grad consulting, where there's this kind of like consistent cadence every kind of, it used to be fall, now it's like late summer, right? But most consulting firms have an engine where they're recruiting from undergraduate and graduate programs, and so that's usually the easiest way. But there are also definitely engines for hiring from other companies. And so that's becoming increasing, but there's a little bit of a different motion for there. Again, this is more tailored towards undergraduate and graduate ideas, but a lot of the ideas here should be helpful as well. We'll take one more quick one. Yeah, end goal of networking, Nunzia. I think it depends on what you want, right? I think if you want to try to get an interview, then you want to kind of tailor your questions to be able to say, hey, what do the interview processes look like, and how do we connect better on these things, and you could even ask them, what would it take for you to recommend somebody to interview, and kind of have some of those meta conversations. And they may not actually be the person in the end, but they can give you some good advice to say, oh, this is actually what I'm looking for in a person. And you can say, oh, great, like maybe I should go do some of those things. But I think often it's multiple connections. It's not just a single call that's going to be able to do it. It's got to be, hey, I've actually met this person in person. I took them out to lunch, or I grabbed a drink with them or something. You had thoughtful questions. You weren't just needy, you were also interested in them, and, figuring out who they are, and had building a little bit of a cultural relationship. So I think your end goals of networking can be whatever you want them to be. I think if you're trying to get an interview, I think a little bit of it is on, figuring out what it is that's going to get them to be excited about recommending you, and also just connecting with the other person, because you never know what value that's going to have in the long run. Great. Let's talk about crushing the interview. So the first tip here, and tip number 3 overall, is practice being uncomfortable a lot. So there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different things to practice. The first is case structuring and process. So make sure you know the dance of consulting. If you're new to this, it's important to be able to figure out, like, okay, how does a case interview go? If you're experienced and have, know kind of the dance of this and the loopholes, then do a lot of the practicing of case structuring. Do a dozen or more prompts and compare your resulting structures. Practice case drills, brainstorming. There's all sorts of different pieces of the interview that are really important. And so get good at generating those kind of structured bucket types. And then practice resume and fit questions too. Work with people who are going to push you to make your answers really compelling. As you think about questions like, who are you? What's your proudest accomplishment? You want to make sure that people are going to be able to listen to you in a way that's compelling and genuine. I would love to do something. We'll see if we get any volunteers, but I would love to have, if a couple of you want to volunteer, we can do a quick little practice. I'm not going to ask you like a hard case or fit question. You don't even have to come on video. If you want to, you can. But if anyone wants to raise their hand, I'll wait just for a second to see if we get any volunteers, and I will ask you a fairly simple question and just ask you to respond to it. Does anyone want to volunteer? Oh, amazing. Valentino, let's do it. Okay, the first 2. Valentino, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone.
Let's do it. Great to meet you, Valentino. Thanks for volunteering.
Yeah, thanks for providing us with all the insights.
Yeah, you got it. Here are all the tips. So Valentino, my question for you is, who are you?
So my name is Valentino. I'm 27 years old, born and raised in Amsterdam. Actually been raised by my grandmother. I had a difficult youth. I'm self-employed because of my difficult upbringing. Eventually it led me to the army, where I discovered my passion for innovation and technology. I engaged on an adventure to university, did my bachelor's in a very technical field in energy science and life science. And there I discovered a passion for business, in combining science with business. And I did my master's in business administration, and currently looking into strategy consulting and breaking into MBB, and specifically Bain, because I think it appeals to me the most in terms of the entrepreneurial attributes, the sectors that they are brilliant in. And I love the people and the culture.
Great. That's awesome. Thanks so much. That's great. A great answer. I think a lot of people will, and quick note on MBB, all 3 are fantastic. I love them all. I have great friends at all 3 of them. I obviously worked at Bain, but all 3 are amazing, and I have nothing but good things to say. Thank you for engaging me in that. I think, like, a lot of people don't necessarily know how to answer that at first. And a lot of us, when we get asked that question, we can kind of ramble for a while and we'll just kind of keep talking about experiences we've had or things we've done or whatever else, and thinking, okay, what's the pithy way to really say, who am I, is super compelling. So thank you, Valentino. I appreciate you engaging in that.
Yeah, thank you
Um,
for the feedback.
all right. Srinivas, I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly, but you want to jump in here?
That's actually absolutely right. Most people don't get it in the first try.
All right. Well, sweet. Okay, Srinivas, what is your proudest accomplishment?
I think in terms of a proudest accomplishment, it would be the time when I helped organize a TEDx at my school. So my name is Srinivas. I'm actually a student currently in Dubai. I'm just completing my undergraduate degree in accounting and finance. I'm in my final year. So I think my proudest accomplishment was when I had my high school set up a TEDx event at campus. And I'd say it's one of my proudest achievements because it took me a lot of effort to work through the licensing process, to work through assembling the list of speakers, putting them together, bringing them to the right space at the right time, looking at the advertising campaigns and how we bring in a lot of students and a lot of people to come and watch the event. And in the end, I think I was about 17 or 18 years old at that time. So getting the opportunity to organize such a big event, it was the first TEDx that was organized at our school. Getting the opportunity to organize such an event, work closely with the staff and faculty in my leadership role, and also gaining significant expertise in how you can host such kind of competitions or such kind of events. Sorry, not competitions, such kind of events. I think was very useful. I think in general, it gave me a very good insight into how you work through certain challenges, how you solve certain problems, because there are obviously problems that arise when you're working with other people with regards to teamwork or with regards to how you get around certain things. And I feel like it was a very new experience for me. And it was my first exposure towards such a big leadership role or such a big opportunity to organize an event. So I feel like that would have been one of my most proud accomplishments because it's not really about winning something or getting an award or a trophy, but it's more about really learning about how you do things, how you organize things, and how you work closely with others.
Awesome. Thank you, Srinivas. That's great. Yeah, I think practicing being pithy, compelling, and what having a good answer to these is super important. So thank you for engaging. I am on us. Thank you so much. We're going to move on, but thank you everybody for volunteering. A great kind of digital round of applause for everybody. As a quick kind of demonstration for my answer to that question, I'm Spencer. I want to make a difference in the world. Not a difference as I define it, but as other people define it. How can I really improve somebody else's life? It's what really has motivated me to want to be a coach and a teacher. I want to get to know people and really help them discover how they can get their life on the course that they want. These values underpin kind of my priority of family, my valuing of religion, my path in consulting, and my current foray into kind of coaching. So that's my answer. I think what is your kind of 20-second answer of who are you, and what's your proudest accomplishment, any of these things. And as you practice these different drills, especially, and having a very quick, pithy, compelling answer that's genuine is going to make you really successful. So a quick kind of plug for boot camps again. We threw this up at the very beginning, but if you want free admission to our management consulting boot camp, you can jump on this link and enter a giveaway for a free ticket. We'll announce the winner at the end of this. And Amanda, I think, can post the link in the chat again. And everybody, if you're on here tonight, or today, whatever time zone you're in, you'll get a $400 discount as well. So I think I'm sure the expected value of everybody on here is $12 maybe. I don't know what it is. So you all just made $12 by being on here. Unfortunately, they're asymmetrical, and so only one person's going to walk out with a free one. But anyway, you'll all get some great value out of these boot camps. They're awesome. There's 8 different courses. They run through how do you do case drills? How do you think about resume things? How do you think about positioning yourself for Bain or McKinsey or whatever it is you're looking for? So they're really, really powerful courses. Okay, we're going to move on to the last couple tips. Number 4 is work together, don't work alone. So be collaborative, be structured, be genuine. Again, if you think of your interviewer as a judge or as an intimidating person, then you're going to be intimidated. So think of them as a friend trying to help you to nail the case. They're on your team. So ask questions, align on objectives. I think a question I get a lot is, what do I do when I'm stuck in an interview, right? And I think a couple of tactics to be able to do is to say, take a step back. What objectives are we actually trying to solve here? What, as we're kind of deep on this little piece of profitability or whatever, how do I take a step back and say, what are we trying to like solve for this or this? And that can be a great way to just align on objectives again. You can also ask a question to say, hey, help me understand this. Are we trying to, again, optimize for this or this? Asking questions can always be really helpful. Second is voice your thinking. So talk through how you're thinking about everything, case math, structuring, everything. They want to know how your mind works. And so if you go away for 2 minutes and, just kind of are writing or thinking or whatever, they have no idea what you're doing. And so you want to talk them through how you're thinking about things, how you're structuring things. You can always ask, we'll get into this since the last one, but for the most part, let them see how your mind works. Finally, be structured. Number one, MISI is real. So mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. You want to create structures that are exclusive from each other, that don't have overlap. And you want to try to fill those as much as you can and cover the most important elements. Number two, it's okay to ask for a minute to think. So if you do need a second in the brainstorming or whatever else, you can always ask. Sometimes the interviewer will say no and just say, hey, let's spitball together. Sometimes the interviewer will say, yeah, great, go ahead, take 30 seconds, 45 seconds, position your thoughts and structure them out. Number three, everything can be structured into 3 buckets, right? This is just my microcosm of that. But, and it doesn't always have to be 3. I think consultants just traditionally, we always like to say, hey, there's 3 things I'm thinking about here. It can be 2, it can be 5, it can be whatever the number is, but think about what are the buckets that really matter. These apply to not only the case parts of the interview, but also the behavioral parts. So as you're thinking about how do I respond when somebody asks me what's my proudest accomplishment, you also want to be structured there. How do you think about how to structure, oh, well, it's this experience, here was the problem, here was how I thought about handling it, here was the result, right? Everything you do, they're going to be evaluating you on how structured you are. When you're brainstorming, you can always take a second to say, hey, can I have a second? And if there's different types of brainstormers too, right? Sometimes people just love spitballing ideas. Sometimes people need an idea to help them get going on additional brainstorming. Whatever you do, make sure you find a way to be structured about it. Okay, number 5, use game theory. Make Bain want you. So the first thing here is to really evaluate yourself. Do you actually want this job? Have some healthy skepticism. If you come across as desperate, then the interviewer is going to kind of interpret that as desperation, right? So from a game theory perspective, that may indicate to the interviewer that they could find somebody better. If you think about this like from a dating perspective, if somebody is super desperate, well, it may not work out quite as well. So be skeptical. Ask yourself if this is really a job that you want. Be confident in yourself. Don't be a jerk and prideful, right? If you come across as like, oh, I'm all that, that's definitely going to backfire on you. But really kind of, think about what you actually want out of life and have a good answer for that. Secondly, ask a couple honest questions. Make sure that you have a few questions in the back of your mind to ask your interviewer at the end to say, hey, how have you navigated the balance of life versus work? Or, what made you want to choose BCG over McKinsey? Or, how have you navigated this industry or whatever? They don't have to be questions for questions' sake. They can be questions that you're genuinely interested in, and maybe things that you're worried about in your own kind of consulting journey or in your own kind of life, whatever it is. But ask honest questions. And then finally, know your value. Think about why Bain would want you. Again, don't be prideful, but know your value and be confident in it. You're going to do great things, even if it's not at Bain or McKinsey or BCG. If they're a part of your journey, great. But if not, that's okay. Believe in yourself. You're going to do great things regardless. And that'll help you, I think, to take the edge off. Some people are like, oh, it's McKinsey or bust. And then when they bust, they're kind of crushed, right? And they don't really know what to do. So if you have this attitude of, I know I'm going to be valuable and I know I'm going to make a difference in the world, regardless of if Bain or McKinsey are a part of that journey, it's going to help you to be a lot more confident. It's going to help you to say, hey, I am actually going to make a difference. And I'm going to be able to accomplish great things. And on the other side, it's going to make you feel a lot more comfortable in the interview itself. So those are the 5 tips. Before we get into a Q&A, we're going to do just a quick giveaway winner. So the winner of a management consulting boot camp is Mattia Bruno. So Mattia Bruno, congratulations. The team will be in touch with you soon.
Thank you very much.
Getting you signed up for that, but congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it, man. Again, everybody was expected to make, 12 bucks out of this experience, but you were the only one who came away with the $800 boot camp. So congratulations. So if you're ready to get started, one thing to think about, hey, here are some 5 great tips from someone who's interviewed dozens of people. I've hired a lot of people into Bain and in other areas. These are tips that I often recommend to people. But managing your career and your life is a game. It might be the most important and highest stakes game you ever play. This is a wise friend once told me this. And it takes more than just hard work and talent to win this game. So if you want to really be successful, it's actually going to take more than just hard work and talent. It takes more than just listening to a 45-minute event and getting some interesting tips. It actually takes a strategy. You've got to think about, how am I going to approach this? Where am I going to put my work? How am I going to actually succeed? How am I going to differentiate myself from other people? Great strategies come from experience, not just guesswork. And so if you really want to have a great strategy, using a coach is the best way, I think, to do this. I think back on my experiences of trying to, get into management consulting, get into business schools, and having great mentors and coaches were by far the most valuable piece in me getting in. Obviously online tools are helpful, running your own case drills, whatever, reading articles, those all things can be really helpful, but having a human interaction of somebody who's been through this process before and can talk you through it is the most valuable thing you can do. So get help from anyone you can, obviously, but a coach is going to help bring out the most compelling aspects of yourself and refine the perfect strategy that you need to accomplish whatever life goal you have. So if you want to get started, there's a QR code here where you can book a strategy call with somebody. I'm happy to work with folks, but also there might be other coaches who are better at this for you specifically. And so reach out to someone on our team and they can match you up with the perfect coach. So we'll pause there. We've got a few minutes for questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat and I will try to answer a handful of them. And we can go from there. Again, if you want to schedule more time to figure out what coaching with me might look like, I'm happy to schedule an introduction call. And there's a lot of other coaches on the platform who can help you with that. Tuba, we'll answer yours first. Why did you leave Bain? I love Bain. I cannot think of a better place to start your career and even have a career long-term. I was at the point earlier this year where I was thinking, do I want to become a partner or not? I was just a couple of years away from becoming a partner. And I thought, wow, do I really want to do this? Is this my life forever? And Bain and McKinsey's models are such that a lot of people can go for 2 or 3 years and gain 10 years of experience in those 3 years and then move on to go do something else. And so they get that, right? For me, I stayed a lot longer than I thought I would be. I thought I'd be there for a couple of years. I ended up being there for almost 7 because I just loved it. I loved the culture. I loved the tough problems. I loved the amazing teams that we were working with. I loved the clients and working with them on, again, some of their hardest problems and being able to solve them was just so satisfying. For me, though, I recently just got married. And I was thinking about what are some of the work-life balances things that I wanted in my life, and location as well. And so the grind to partner was going to be a little bit of a tough one for me, to say, okay, we're going to do this. And I'd been traveling already a decent amount. And so I felt like now was the time to try something else. I also have always just wanted to build a company. I've always wanted to go kind of build something on my own. And so, and I loved coaching. I loved executive coaching. I thought it was just so much fun. I had done a good amount of it in the past, and Leland felt like the perfect intersection of that. So it was kind of the interplay of a perfect opportunity to leave. I'm still in really good contact with a lot of my friends at Bain, and they've said, hey, Spencer, anytime you want to come back, if this startup thing doesn't work out, come back. So I'm still in contact with them, and that may be an answer at some point. But for me, I cannot think of a better place to start my career. What would you do to emphasize, what would you emphasize to do in order to get an interview, at least? I think those couple tips at the beginning, I think like understand the process first. If you're like new to this, get online, figure out what the dates are, think about, what the processes are to actually apply for an interview. And then truly, it really is a great resume, a great cover letter, and then one person in the room who can fight for you. If you have all of those three things, you're going to have a pretty good likelihood of getting an interview. Obviously, within the resume, there's a lot of things there. Having a good ACT or GMAT score, having really compelling experience on your cover letter, having a compelling story of why you want to be here, and then having somebody in the room is just super critically important. Would you think higher level management professionals at consulting companies would be willing to spend significant time with young graduates? Depends, right? I think if you can always shoot your shot, right? Like DM people and see. As a senior manager at Bain, I definitely spent time with young graduates. I've had so many people who have given to me, and I love being able to give back to other people. Now, that being said, time is limited, right? And so Leland is actually an incredible place to be able to match you up with people who have had, professional and amazing experience in the management consulting world, who now are willing to say, hey, yeah, it's actually, if you pay a little bit of money, like I'm very happy to like give you as much attention as I possibly can. But also just shoot your shot, like with people, reach out. Obviously, don't reach out to like with the same, stock message to every single person because people talk to each other, but definitely reach out. All right, Raymond asks, how can someone from a semi or non-target school differentiate themselves and land an interview beyond networking? So yeah, I think it is tougher if you're not in a target school, and thinking about how to differentiate yourself. That can be a tougher way to actually land an interview. I think, but people do it. I have multiple friends who have been able to do this, who came from whatever university that wasn't necessarily a target school, or had a different background. And I think networking is important. There's a grind there, right? But beyond networking, thinking about that cover letter and thinking like, okay, like what makes my story so interesting and why would I provide new perspectives, right? A lot of these consulting companies actually love hiring people with different backgrounds and different perspectives. Now, the biggest pool is people who are coming from business backgrounds, and so they're obviously going to hire a lot of those. But if you can demonstrate that, hey, I've got different perspectives that are going to be really value additive, that can be really compelling. So think about how you can put that into some of your cover letter. All right, Iman asks, should you also be networking with HR from MBB? Does it help in the interviewing process? It can, but it totally depends. Again, sometimes those HR people are in the room where it happens, but not always. If you do have connections to HR people, they can be great because they're oftentimes helping to facilitate a lot of the process. But their input is not necessarily as high as some of the actual kind of decision committee people. And so once you figure out who those people are, those are the ones who are really going to say, I've met with this person a few times. I did a practice case with them, right? And I really think we should give them an interview slot. Those are the ones that you really want to focus on. All right, Yassine asks, how tricky is it moving from management consulting in a boutique firm to an MBB? So I actually helped one of my close friends, Michelle, with this. She was at a boutique firm and wanted to go get a job at McKinsey. And so we did a handful of cases together. We kind of talked through what that process would look like. And she ended up landing a job at McKinsey. She ended up going to HBS. So she totally is a model of being able to do that and crushing it. I think it does take a little bit more work when you're coming in from the undergraduate or the graduate programs. You have a little bit more of a structure and a handholding to be able to do that, but you can totally do it. And again, I think all of these tips totally apply where, how do you make sure you're making the connections that you need to? Are you super polished? And my friend Michelle was so good at this. Like she was just the great example of a lot of these tips, and she was able to land a job at McKinsey. Would you recommend an MBA as someone who has tried to get into consulting and MBB and has not gotten interviews? Would the MBA help get my foot in the door as I can get an internship there and then a full-time position? Absolutely, Nunzia. I think I've seen this route for a lot of people where they didn't get consulting out of undergrad. They went and worked for a few years in something that they, ended up really liking, but then they said, hey, I really want to do consulting. An MBA can be a great gateway because you're entering back into that kind of main engine and mainstream, where you can go to, you've got the club support, you've got MBB who are coming on campus and can support. And so absolutely an MBA can be a great way to kind of get your way in there. ENS, what if you have about 1 to 2 years of work experience? What are the chances of making it? Yeah, I think, again, it totally depends. We're looking for people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And so as you think about, and most people have no experience, really. I mean, they've had internships, right? But out of undergrad, most people have no experience. And so if you have a couple of years of experience, you could go get an MBA, and that's a great kind of, again, mainstream route to be able to do it. But a lot of people also figure out how to take advantage of these tips to be able to make it into consulting, even if they're already working at a company right now. All right, Jordan asks, have you ever seen personality flavor points on resumes, like amateur welding, that have a negative impact on a resume read? And if so, how can you make sure that what you include doesn't cause that problem? So I think, yeah, absolutely. Like you should be a little bit careful about what you put on your resume. But for the most part, a lot of these little things like amateur welding can actually be great conversation starters. I had soccer on the bottom of mine. And so like the first interaction I had with my interviewer, we ended up talking about soccer for the first, I think maybe 15 or 20 minutes of the interview. And then we got to the case in the last 15 minutes, which was great for me. But I think, think about what are some things that might be negative or that you don't want to talk about. I think one thing that could be a negative aspect to this is if you put it on your resume, but you're not actually an expert in the thing, or you don't actually really love it that much, it'll be really awkward. Because if they start saying, oh, I see that you listen to this podcast or something, and you've only listened to a couple of those episodes, then it'll be a little bit awkward because they're not going to be able to have that kind of conversation. So the things that you do put on your resume as those personality flavor points, make sure that those are things that you actually love and actually can speak to. Yassine asks, are we going to have access to the recording by any chance? Absolutely. So this recording will be sent out to everybody who's registered, all the kind of 450 people who have registered. And so, yeah, you can kind of, we'll send an email out about that. And anyone who's registered for the event should have access to it. Okay, well, thank you. I know we're just about at time, so thanks so much, everyone, for joining. And really appreciate, you jumping in here again. I think being able to get into one of these consulting firms can absolutely change your life and be an incredible experience to start your careers, and maybe it will be many of your full careers for the rest of your life. But leverage these tips. Think about, how do you actually be you and differentiate yourself, and also get a coach. I think, if you want to reach out to me to talk about what that might look like, happy to chat. And then a lot of us here at Leland can also help. So thank you all so much again for joining, and best of luck in your recruiting efforts.